Elvis stepped into the roadside diner as if he were anyone else seeking refuge from the unrelenting Memphis sun. Simple shirt, no entourage, just a man and his curious 5-year-old daughter. He promised Lisa Marie a quick coffee and disappeared down the narrow corridor to place a call, his voice low and urgent through the payphone. Behind him, Mary Ellen wiped a counter, her shift stretching on as she fought exhaustion and the worry of a sick mother at home. When she glanced at that small, quiet figure huddled at the far booth, Lisa Marie, untouched plate before her, something stirred. Without a second thought, Mary Ellen tore a corner from her own sandwich, placed it in front of the girl, and whispered, "Your folks must be tied up. Kids shouldn't have to wait for dinner." At that moment, Elvis re-entered the diner. His world froze. Here was his daughter, shy but dignified. And here was a stranger showing the kind of grace money can't buy. In Mary Ellen's simple act, he saw a truth he'd long forgotten. Compassion is the greatest melody of all. The summer heat lay heavy over Memphis in 1973, flattening the horizon beneath a relentless sun. Down on Highway 78's fringe, beyond the neon of the city's center, stood Mel's Roadside Cafe, a modest layover spot for weary truckers and lunchtime office employees alike. Its vinyl booths were cracked, the formica tables scarred, and the linoleum floor bore the dents of 1,000 hurried footsteps. Overhead, a lone ceiling fan turned lazily, stirring the humid air. Margaret West, known around those back rooms simply as Maggie, stagehand admin, slid through the door with her daughter, Lisa Marie, on her hip. She carried the child in one arm and a battered picnic cooler in the other. Lisa Marie, 5 years old, wore her hair in 2 bouncing pigtails and pressed her face to the cool glass of the front window. She watched the few patrons hunched over their plates, as if inertia alone kept them from fleeing the heat. All afternoon in Graceland, her father had promised her a vanilla malt, but sold-out lines at the ice cream stand pushed him to compromise. Coffee and a grilled cheese would have to do. With a whispered apology to Lisa Marie, he guided her to a corner booth and slipped away down the back hallway to place a quick call to his tour manager. They were alone in that booth for no more than 2 minutes when Mary Ellen appeared. Mary Ellen, age 26, carried herself with a soft sort of grace. Dark hair pinned behind her ears, warm brown eyes, and a calm manner that suited late-night diners better than the stiff uniforms of waitstaff elsewhere. She'd been working extra shifts lately, trying to keep her own young daughter's room stocked with medicine and groceries since her mother's stroke had left her bedridden. In the humid hush of the cafe, Mary Ellen noticed the small girl's trembling shoulders, her empty plate, and the way she lifted her chin at the sound of footsteps approaching. At the sight of that pained little face, Mary Ellen's sense of duty overrode every protocol she had learned. Without a word to the kitchen or her manager, she took her own sandwich, a half-eaten turkey club whose crusts she'd saved for the staff break, and set it with care before Lisa Marie. The girl's eyes widened as Mary Ellen slid into the booth. "Here," she said, voice low. "I reckon your folks got held up. But kids shouldn't wait hungry no matter who they're with, right?" The words were simple, laced with genuine concern. In the hallway, Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, fresh from the recording studio in his plain brown shirt and unadorned slacks, caught the tail end of that exchange. He paused, his talk with the tour manager cut short at the sight of Mary Ellen's gesture. Through the doorway's sliver of illumination, he watched as Mary Ellen gently coaxed the sandwich toward the child, as Lisa Marie's lips parted in shy wonder, and as Mary Ellen dipped her head to hide the worried glisten in her eyes. He stepped into the cafe without announcement. Mary Ellen, startled, glanced up and met his soft brown gaze. There was no fanfare, The man was simply another customer in an unremarkable building, moments away from discovering how small acts of generosity could ripple outward. Elvis pulled up a chair at the end of the booth. "Thank you," he said quietly, without revealing who he was. His voice was steady, bearing the weight of gratitude. "That meant more than you know." Mary Ellen's cheek reddened. I'm sorry," she stammered. "I didn't know that was your daughter." He shook his head, eyes warm. "It's okay. Just thank you. She needs a friend sometimes." And with that, he returned to the hallway, leaving Mary Ellen to collect herself in the soft hum of the fan. Behind her, Lisa Marie peeled away half a sandwich, hands sticky with mustard, cheeks pink with gratitude. The cafe resumed its ordinary rhythms. Plates clattered, the cash register clicked, and the lone fan continued its slow rotation. But in that small roadside diner, something had shifted. A seed of kindness, planted by a woman unseen by the world, had taken root in the heart of a legend. And from that moment on, neither Mary Ellen nor Elvis, and certainly not Lisa Marie, would ever forget how a single, selfless act illuminated the darkest of days. The next morning dawned with a brittle clarity that felt at odds with the weight lifted from Mary Ellen's chest the night before. At 6:30, she was back behind the counter of Mel's roadside cafe, hauling pots of coffee between booths and wiping down Formica tables. But her mind hovered over the memory of Elvis's quiet words and the soft gratitude in his eyes. She had barely slept, tossing and turning between thoughts of her mother's pallor and the unexpected warmth of that stranger's thanks. As the lunch rush began, truck drivers in grease-stained overalls, salesmen in rumpled ties, lunch ladies from nearby offices, Mary Ellen kept her eyes focused on the task at hand. She scarcely noticed the jukebox crackle to life with a distant guitar riff, or the way the floor's linoleum pattern seemed sharper in the morning light. It was only when the cafe's phone rang, piercing, mechanical, that she looked up in alarm. Her shift supervisor, young Tom, snatched up the receiver. "Yeah?" he said. Then his eyes went wide. He passed the phone to Mary Ellen with a shaky hand. "It's for you," he advised in a stage whisper. Mary Ellen pressed the receiver to her ear. A cool, professional voice greeted her. "Miss Ellen, this is Grace from the Presley estate. Mr. Presley wishes to apologize for any confusion last night, and he would like to offer his personal thanks." Before she could reply, the line clicked dead. Her heart thundered. She looked to Tom, who shrugged as if the phone had burned his hand. The cafe buzzed around her, orders called out, spoons clinking, voices rising and falling. But already Mary Ellen felt the hush of something monumental unfolding. At precisely 3 p.m., a sleek Cadillac rolled up outside, its gleaming black paint reflecting the afternoon light. Word traveled fast among the staff. "The King's back." Mary Ellen watched through the window as Elvis himself emerged, accompanied by a man in a sharp suit, most likely a lawyer or a state representative. They entered by the back door. A hush fell, and even the regular customers sat up straighter in their seats. They found Mary Ellen in the rear hallway, restocking napkins and condiments. Elvis stood at the doorframe, silent until she glanced up. His presence was calm, assured, not the showman adored by thousands, but a man on a mission. He held a large white envelope in his hand. "Mary Ellen," he said, voice as steady as last night's, "I'm sorry about what happened today." His lawyer stepped forward and handed her the envelope. Inside was a crisp check made out for $3,000, an astounding sum for any server, let alone one scraping by on minimum wage, and a brief note in Elvis's handwriting. "I promised your kindness that I'd repay it. This is not charity. It's a beginning. Please, Use it for what matters most. Her fingers trembled as she touched the paper. Tears welled, but Mary Ellen blinked them down. She had been taught to keep her worries hidden, to smile through pain. Only now she felt the genuine relief that came from being seen and valued. Before she could find her voice, Elvis spoke again. "And I'd like you to consider joining a project at Graceland. We're starting a program for families caring for ill relatives, like your mom. No titles, no cameras, just people who need help." She swallowed hard, words trembling in her throat. I don't deserve—" He shook his head. "You deserve every bit. You helped my daughter when I was away. Now, let me help you." The shift resumed around them, but for Mary Ellen, time had warped. She stepped back into the cafe proper and stared at the check, at the note, at the empty floor where Elvis had stood. Then she looked up to see the Jack of Hearts drawing on the bulletin board. One of her sketches for the upcoming local art fair, thumbtacked between flyers for bingo night. For the first time, she dared to imagine a future where her talents and her compassion were recognized beyond the dingy tables of Mel's. That evening, on her way home, she stopped by the radio repair shop. Sliding the check across the counter, she asked the proprietor to fix the old transistor radio by her mother's bedside. "It's been so quiet," she confessed, "and music helped her once before." He smiled, his joints cracking like old floorboards, and said simply, "Happy to do it." As she stepped back into the humid Memphis dusk, Mary Ellen cradled the repaired radio and the check like sacred relics. The world still felt raw and uncertain, her mother's illness, her own self-doubt, but now she carried something stronger than worry. The certainty that one small act of kindness can ignite hope, not just once, but for a lifetime. And somewhere just beyond the glow of the cafe's neon sign, a black Cadillac slid away into the night, carrying its owner back to a mansion where family waited, leaving in its wake a promise kept without fanfare, and a life transformed by quiet gratitude. Mary Ellen hardly slept that night. The check on her bedside table gleamed like moonlight against her battered alarm clock. The repaired transistor radio rested on the dresser, its speaker mesh slightly dented, but promising melody once more. As dawn crept in through the threadbare curtains, she dressed in faded jeans and a soft cotton blouse, her heart a blend of anticipation and nerves. Today she would meet Elvis Presley again. Not as a waitress, not as a stranger, but as someone he had chosen to trust. Gracefully, the Cadillac appeared at her door just past 9. Elvis stepped out alone this time, dressed quietly in a pale shirt and tailored slacks. No entourage, no cameras, just two people bound by a late-night exchange of compassion. He offered Mary Ellen his arm, and they walked together across the dew-slick lawn toward the white-columned portico of Graceland. Inside, the house felt lived in. Warm wood paneling, shelves lined with photographs of family and friends, and the soft murmur of Liza Marie practicing piano in an adjoining room. Elvis paused at the threshold of his living room and gestured for Mary Ellen to follow him in. She sank into a deep armchair, upholstered in emerald green, trying to steady her racing pulse. Elvis took the seat opposite her, leaning forward, his hands clasped loosely. Silence stretched between them, but it was sympathetic, not empty, an acknowledgement that words were not always enough. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft. "I've been where your mother is, waiting on help that never came. I've seen how a single small act can reshape a life." He paused, as though weighing each syllable. "When I toured in '56, supplies were scarce back home. I remember sharing my last $10 with a neighbor whose roof had caved in. The thank you note she wrote me years later said 5 words, You were my saving grace." "I never forgot that," Mary Ellen breathed, cueing her own story. "My mother. She survived the stroke but fell into silence. She stopped reading, stopped laughing. All she'd cling to was the scratchy radio you helped me repair. She said it reminded her that life was still worth tuning in for." Elvis nodded, and in his eyes she saw the man behind the microphone, a survivor of struggles far from the spotlight. He reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved a slim, leather-bound notebook. Laying it before her, he flipped to a blank page. "I want you to write your story," he said. "Not for anyone else, just for yourself. And then I want to help you share it." Unsure what he meant, Mary Ellen watched him pull a pen from the notebook's spine. "You've got a gift with words, Mary Ellen. The way you saw my daughter, the way you cared for her. That empathy, that compassion. It's your voice. I want you to use it." He held out the notebook to her. "I've funded scholarships at the Nashville Arts Academy. I'd like your name on them. You'll oversee submissions and help young writers find their place, like I wanted for you." Her hands hesitated, trembling as they touched the leather cover. "Mr. Presley, I don't know what to say." He tilted his head, a gentle half-smile. "Call me Elvis, and say yes." Tears pricked Mary Ellen's eyes, but this time they were tears of purpose. She closed the notebook reverently and nodded. "Yes." Over the next hour, they talked practicalities, the scholarship criteria, the application process, even the design of letterheads featuring her original sketches. Each detail was laid out with care, as if shaping a dream together. In the background, soft chords from Lisa Marie's piano trailed in, and every so often Elvis would pause, glance toward the music, and smile. It was a family scene, warm, unvarnished, perfectly ordinary in its affection. When Mary Ellen finally rose to leave, Elvis walked her to the front door. The sky outside had shifted to a pale afternoon blue. He extended his hand. "Welcome to Graceland's new chapter," he said. Mary Ellen stepped out, clutching the notebook to her chest. The air smelled of magnolias and possibility. As she descended the front steps, she glanced back once and saw Elvis standing in the doorway, a solitary figure in denim and grace, watching her walk away. She understood then that this moment, this act of belief, would guide her for the rest of her life. Not as a story of a superstar's generosity, but as the unfolding of her own voice, awakened by one extraordinary man who had dared to look beyond titles and headlines and simply see a young woman's heart. And inside, behind the lens of history, Graceland's gates seemed to swing open, not just for the king of rock and roll, but for every soul seeking a chance to be heard. Over the next several weeks, Mary Ellen settled into her new role with a combination of trepidation and exhilaration. Each morning she arrived at the modest Graceland offices, once a storage room, now converted into a bright workspace, with its pale yellow walls adorned by framed letters of gratitude. She spent her days reading applications from aspiring young writers, poems scrawled on lined notebook pages, short stories typed on typewriters, and heartfelt essays detailing personal struggles. Some applicants described childhoods shadowed by loss, illness, or poverty, mirroring the path she and her mother had traveled. Others wrote of dreams so vivid, it seemed the words practically leaped from the page. Elvis visited periodically, always appearing quietly through the back door. His encouragement was gentle, a nod of approval when he glanced over a promising submission, a brief word of praise at the end of a particularly moving narrative. He never dominated the process. His presence was that of a supportive partner, rather than a commanding benefactor. To Mary Ellen, it felt like a miracle to watch a legend lean so earnestly into her own ambitions. Soon enough, the first cohort of scholarships was ready to be announced. Mary Ellen organized a small ceremony at the Graceland Gardens, where magnolia trees cast long shadows on the lawn. A dozen teens gathered beneath a striped marquee, nervously clutching portfolios. Elvis stood beside Mary Ellen at the makeshift podium, a wooden crate draped with a velvet cloth, and invited each recipient forward. She recognized the bright spark in their eyes, the way a budding artist glowed at the prospect of having their work validated. As the final name was called, Mary Ellen closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and scanned the faces before her. She thought of her own journey from waitress to administrator, from bystander to advocate. And then, in the quiet hum of that summer evening, she spotted a familiar silhouette at the edge of the gathering, the young florist from the diner, the one man who had quietly shown kindness to her and her mother all those years ago. He had traveled from the outskirts of Memphis to witness this event, unannounced, unrecognized, yet present in spirit. When the last scholarship recipient stepped down from the podium, applause rippled through the crowd. Mary Ellen turned to Elvis, her voice thick with gratitude. "Thank you for believing in me," she whispered. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Thank you for reminding me why I started this," he replied softly. That night, another listener found solace in the ripple effect of generosity. In a hospital room not far away, Mary Ellen's mother, the woman who first spun Elvis records on her turntable, watched the event televised on a small black-and-white set. As the camera panned across grinning teenagers and their families, she reached out to touch her daughter's photograph on the bedside table. Tears of relief and pride trailed silently down her cheeks. In the weeks that followed, Mary Ellen's work expanded. She visited schools across Tennessee, leading writing workshops and sharing her own story of being seen and uplifted by a stranger whose fame had not blinded him to ordinary acts of care. During one such visit, she encountered a shy boy who confessed he had never written a single sentence in his life. With patience, she guided him through the first shaky strokes of a poem. By the end of the session, he read aloud, uncertain, but brimming with newfound courage. Word of the scholarships reached far beyond the South. Applications arrived from Nashville, from Birmingham, even from Louisville. Each package bore the hopes of young creators yearning to be heard. And each time Mary Ellen opened an envelope, she felt the echo of that first moment in the cafe. Offering the last piece of lunch to a hungry child, she realized how profoundly a single gesture can reshape a lifetime. A year after that blistering summer day, another landmark event took place, a benefit concert at the Overton Park Shell. Sponsored by Elvis's charitable foundation, it featured local bands, gospel choirs, and a final performance by the King himself. Mary Ellen stood in the wings, watching as he took the stage. His voice, seasoned and rich, carried across the amphitheater. When he began, "If I Can Dream," the audience fell into reverent silence. Mary Ellen looked out over the sea of faces, families, scholarship recipients, volunteers, and felt the full weight of the legacy she had helped to build. As the final notes drifted into the warm night air, Elvis raised his gaze to the balcony where Mary Ellen and her mother sat side by side. He offered them a single nod of acknowledgement, and Mary Ellen returned it with a smile that spoke volumes. Neither of them needed words. In that moment, gratitude, respect, and shared humanity passed between them like an unbroken melody. When the lights came up, Mary Ellen lingered a moment, then slipped backstage to find Elvis. She found him alone, unloading his guitar from the stand. He looked up, exhaustion softened by fulfillment. "You've done more than anyone could ask," he said. She shook her head gently. You did this, but you gave me the space to grow. He chuckled, a low, genuine sound. This is only the beginning. The world needs more people like you. They walked out together into the night, each step echoing on the concrete behind the stage. The scent of magnolia lingered, mingling with the distant roar of traffic. Mary Ellen paused at the edge of the backstage door, then turned to him. Elvis, she said, thank you for teaching me what it means to be seen. He placed a fatherly hand on her shoulder. Thank you for teaching me what it means to notice. And as she stepped into the parking lot, the cool summer air carrying the faintest hum of guitars packing away, Mary Ellen West understood that kindness, when passed forward, can form a chain strong enough to hold entire communities. In the heart of Memphis, under the same stars that once guided a young girl's path, the legacy of a single act continued its quiet, unstoppable rise.